Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I, Ken, read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Our next letter comes from Theresa. Theresa writes, Hi Ken, I'm a 32-year-old anxiously attached woman who was dumped a little over a year ago by a man I now wonder who had an avoidant attachment. We met on Hinge and started dating back in September 2022. Our relationship lasted 2 weeks, shy of a year. I met Nick, who lived 2 hours away from me. We immediately hit it off over our opposing opinions on season 8 of Game of Thrones. Can I just take a moment to say, I want to be in on that conversation. I fucking love Game of Thrones, except for the last parts of it. And so I just wanted to take a little moment there to say I could easily see that being the basis for some great conversation. And the reason I'm highlighting that, apart from being a little nerd, is because one thing I love about dating is when you're having those really heated conversations with someone and you're really getting into it intellectually. Something that I think a lot of us will relate to when it comes to a lot of avoidant attachers is how intellectually stimulating they can be. We don't know if this person, Nick, is avoidantly attached, but let's keep going. He asked me on day 2 of talking what I was looking for on the app. He agreed and said he was pretty much looking for the same thing as me, that he'd already spent his 20s traveling solo and that he was ready for someone to share life experiences with exclusively. He told me he'd never been in a relationship before and had just gotten out of a failed situationship 2 months prior. Despite my concerns, his intentionality made him seem safe. By the second in-person date, we were official. Oh, congrats to both of you. And also very quick. After asking to cancel our third date and claiming to need the weekend to himself, Nick mentioned his ex situation again. He said it worried him how he was supposed to give 100% to a new relationship when he was still dwelling on the resentment he felt from a previous relationship. He continued, I don't mean to say I'm not putting my everything into us. I'm just worried it's going to cause me to fuck up what we have going because I have such a tough time trusting and committing to stuff now. Weird. We will get back to that. I asked him if he wasn't over her. He told me he had no space left in his life for her, that he blocked her. He said it wasn't that he wasn't over her, it was more that he felt shame for allowing himself to be cheated on and used by her as a pawn to make another guy jealous. I told him that my ex cheated on me and wasn't over his ex either, so this created some worry. I asked him if he thought we should pump the brake on our relationship. He said no, that he was fully invested in us, but that he felt like he needed to share where his headspace was currently at. Another month passed and he mentioned her again. Remember my ex who cheated on me with that guy who didn't even want her? Turns out she just moved in with the next guy she started dating with. Can you say bullet dodge? This is why I'm happy to have you and be with you now. I wasn't flattered, and yet he looked at me waiting to take the compliment. No, this just showed me he was still very affected and also attached to her. Nick said, I love you first. He said it always felt like he needed to follow a script in a relationship because otherwise He didn't know what he was supposed to do. He later told me that our relationship felt natural and he had never enjoyed holding someone's hand in public until me. He told me often that I was his dream girl and out of his league. He even expressed a lot of gratitude towards me for entering his life because of the emotional support I gave him. Several months in, Nick admitted to his past fuckboy behavior. He said he'd gone to therapy for his issues after a platonic female friend told him he needed to stop treating women poorly. He urged me not to use his past against him as others had done after he had opened up to them in the past. He was vocally a feminist now. He said he didn't deserve me and told me I was too good for him. And he'd laugh often saying he was a bad person and asked me jokingly why I was with him. Oh boy. Okay, we're going to take a pause here. Theresa, Jesus Christ, we've got some warning lights and potential red flags already. Let's get into this. So, I think the first thing I want to state is that I worry about this guy a lot on the basis that getting official after date two is fast. That's just a fact. Then there's the backpedaling that occurs where he's starting to freak out about the fact that, he's still got a hang up over his ex who cheated on him, which on one hand I get, but it's like, bro, you should be processing this in therapy and working on it and not letting that get in the way of a relationship. And that could be the basis of some Phantom X BS and some self-sabotagey behavior coming up where he's not allowing himself to fully open himself up to you. But it does seem like another part of him really does like you. He's saying, I love you. He said it first. He said that you're his dream girl. But I worry because in the same breath, he's also telling you how he's out of your league and he doesn't think that he's a good person. So we're already getting some shame. We're already getting bad self-esteem. He's also mentioned to you that he had past fuckboy behavior that was apparently used against him. I just think that if you've been a fuckboy in the past, if people are using that against you, there's probably a justification for it. I'm not saying that we all need to be reminded of our past in a way that's not appropriate, but something here tells me that he doesn't feel particularly good about himself in relation to his past actions. And again, I go back to shame. I suspect he doesn't have a good relationship with his emotions. So, in that context, I worry about what he's saying here because it does suggest to me that his past has defined him quite a bit. And he's also resorted to some pretty shitty behavior. So, yeah, I'm worried about some of the stuff that's being said here. As for him revealing that his ex had apparently turned in, gotten with the next guy, I sort of think that we don't know who that, ex was, but already it's starting to sound to me like she had her fair share of attachment issues as well, too. I think what worries me is the fact that he feels the need to keep bringing her up. Like, to me, it's just sort of like, bro, you're clearly not over this. And you clearly felt that because, Theresa, when you wrote this, you're already writing about how you weren't flattered by this and that you're not particularly okay. It really does seem like he's coming with a lot of baggage. And last thing I'll say for now is him being vocally a feminist. I'm all for people who are, wanting to be more about equality and also supporting people in general. Particularly, look, if you've had a history of being bad to women, it's probably a good idea for you to actually learn why your behavior is not okay. But declaring yourself a feminist is hardly you know, let's just say it's hardly a sign of positive change in and of itself. You can speak all the mantras, you can read about Simone de Beauvoir, I think she was a feminist, and also, understand a lot of the tenets that feminism is about, but it doesn't mean you yourself are someone who actually is good with women in a relationship. And I think one thing that I see particularly a lot in men who have particularly maternal issues, where there's been signs of enmeshment and emotional incest, is there is a tendency for them to act badly with women. There is a tendency for them to be misogynistic. There is a tendency for them to also downplay their own significance to women when they're trying to be a good person. but there's also so much resentment towards women. So I'm wondering, given that I haven't read the full letter yet, I wonder if there's going to be some misogynistic, sexist behavior that comes up later in this letter as well, too, because he's already putting you on a bit of a pedestal, and that pedestal can easily turn into a prison in the lowest pits of hell if he feels like you are causing him pain and suffering for being in a relationship with him, meaning there's a bit of splitting up potentially that could happen as well too. So yeah, I worry about this guy. There's enough stuff here where I think I'd be not only pumping the brakes, but also potentially speaking to some friends, family, and a therapist to find out what the F could potentially be going on. But nevertheless, it sounds like he's got some good parts to him as well too. So I don't want to throw him under the bus completely. Maybe that'll happen a bit later. All right, let's continue. Theresa writes, he was always encouraging me to come to him with any worries. Nick started joking that he wished I would be mean to him, that he wanted me to tease him and objectify him. Oh boy. That's a really bad sign to me because it suggests that it's just continuing some of the stuff that I was saying before, that, he's used to. Sorry, let me start that sentence again. This continues what I was saying before on the basis that there's low self-esteem, but also he's not used to having healthy relationships. The fact that he's wishing you to be mean to him suggests to me that there is a need for him to feel like he's being punished for something. So, not good. He would tease me often for being too nice or too good and too easy to win over in the beginning. Yep. He began harping on sexual fantasies of him with women who he thought were too good for him. And 6 to 7 months in, he requested me to slap him during our next sexual encounter and to call him a piece of shit. Oh, low self-esteem. Here we come. I felt like he was trying to up the ante after only having had sex 12 times, and that he was trying to work out his feelings of inadequacy in the bedroom. I'm actually going to take a moment here to say I think there could be more than that going on here as well too. I think it might not only be his inadequacy, but also his discomfort being in this relationship. I suspect that he's hoping to feel a spark of trauma, if you will, in order to make him feel like this is right. Because the fact that he's asking you to up the ante, I think two things are going on. I suspect that he's relating to you about how he's dated good women because he's been through this cycle before where, quote unquote, he's found good women probably too boring or too this or that. But these are rationalizations because he clearly wasn't getting, yeah, I suspect he wasn't getting the spark he wanted in these dynamics. And so as a consequence, he's trying to up it with you. I feel like this is potentially him going into phase two, into withdrawing, which I know might sound strange because he's, trying to increase what seems to be the physical intimacy between you, right? But I reckon there's a reason for it. I reckon he's trying to probably, validate whether or not this is the right relationship for him. And I suspect he's having some big doubts, not healthy doubts. I suspect he's probably feeling quite shitty in this relationship because he has to sit with some very uncomfortable emotions about him. So yeah, I think that there's definitely some problems that are arising at this point. All right. He often said he would never live up to his family. His parents were both retired clinical psychologists with PhDs. His siblings had degrees, and I tried to reassure him that his skills were just as special as his family's, but he'd brush me off and say he was a failure. Jesus. I expressed to him not wanting to perpetuate his negative self-concept in the bedroom. Good on you. I understand degradation kinks are a common thing, but this just felt too real. I agree. I want to take a moment here to say, I know that some people love different kinks in the bedroom. More power to you. But I personally am not a fan when someone is trying to basically, be replaying very dodgy dynamics from childhood in the bedroom because it just feels way too intense. And it feels like I'm perpetuating a cycle and enabling bad behavior that's not really healthy for a person. So I'm personally not for it. It just doesn't feel good. Anyways, he continued saying, I understand that degradation kinks, Theresa continues, I understand degradation kinks are a common thing, but this just felt too real. He told me it wasn't that deep, and he was just wanting to see me try on different persona for once. This is so shitty. I asked him if he was disappointed. He said he was, but that he didn't want to make me uncomfortable. No, I don't think that's entirely true. I think he does want you to change a bit there. I think he wants to see if you'll go that distance for him because then he'd feel a sense of control and also a sense of validation that you're going into that deep end with him. By deep, I should say, uh, not good deep, but just, murky trauma deep. Yeah, no, I'm feeling like we are very much in fearful avoidant territory here. And I really feel like he's probably quite disappointed that you actually held a boundary there and you didn't do what he was suggesting. That's my 2 cents on this. So let's continue. I appreciated him validating my concern, so I told him maybe I could work up to the slapping in time. He said he had porn brain from watching too much porn in his teen years, and he later had taken control. He had trouble performing during sex. He was on ADHD medication and claimed that to be the culprit. No. I don't know if anyone's actually seen these terrible ads on social media where they were saying, you don't have sexual impulsivity, you have ADHD. It's like, listen, sure, people with ADHD might experience hyperarousal and they might be more prone to hyperfixation, amongst other things. But ADHD is rarely the basis for, philandering, for sex addiction and porn addiction. You might get a dopamine hit. You might be chasing that high, if you will, because that's just the way that you're wired due to your ADHD. But that's not, in my experience, and I could be wrong, I've rarely seen that being the culprit behind a lot of this. It might be correlated, but correlation does not equal causation. So, yeah, no. His whole ADHD thing, pass, hard no. He just doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that he actually has issues. This guy has got so much shame, and I suspect that the porn brain, as he calls it, is probably, part of his way of avoiding those uncomfortable emotions. I suspect that him beating himself up, telling him he's a bad person, and slapping him is all about trying to validate the inner critic inside of him, because that's the narrative he has inside of his head. I imagine his head would probably feel like an absolute gutter where he's beating himself up constantly. So, yeah, his narrative is his internal narrative, not good. Anyways, let's continue. I started questioning if he even liked me. He'd pick up on my suspicions and quickly say, I've good intentions. I'm trying to get you to believe that I'm a good guy. Oh, God. We're going to pause again. Once again, I am feeling like this is someone who has real core wounds of, I am a bad person, but wants to come off as the good person. This continues. One time he called me out and said he loved me, but that it was unfair of me to put false accusations on him that he was tired of me. I apologized and he said it wasn't that big of a deal, but that it made him uncomfortable. But when we do a relationship check-ins, he'd tell me that this was his most sexually and emotionally fulfilling relationship. I could imagine. I mean, this is his first actual relationship, right? So I suspect that this is actually doing good stuff. Can I just take a moment here to Theresa to say, good on you for doing relationship check-ins. That's a very that's not something I read people doing all the time. So good on you. You've clearly done your homework in terms of how to facilitate relationships from the sounds of it. So yeah, great technique you got there. 2 nights before the breakup, he said that he 2 nights before the breakup, he said that we'd beaten the dating app odds. No way. He's telling you you beaten the dating app odds and then he discards you 2 days later. That's fucked. One day after we had sex in a dressing room and I was leaving, he kissed me and said, we'll always have that dressing room, in a wistful way. He had a dark sense of ironic humor, so I tried to laugh it off. On another trip together, I brought up a friend of mine who suspected her boyfriend of cheating. So she went through his phone and he told me, you can go through mine, but you won't find anything. Well, except for some things that you probably wouldn't be happy about. And after asking him what he meant, he said that he just sometimes complimented friends that were women. Ah, that's hoarding. This guy's a sex addict. I asked him if he was in a flirting tone, but he dropped it. Sorry, I asked if the communication with the friends, who were women, was done in a flirting tone, but he dropped it. Yeah, it definitely was. This guy's definitely got sex addiction written all over him. Weeks later, I brought up other women's thirst traps on social. Weeks later, I brought up for the second time how triggering it was for me to have a boyfriend liking other women's thirst traps on social media. Yeah, I agree. He asked me to clarify what a thirst trap was. Oh, bull fucking shit. Bro, you know what you're doing. He tried to reassure me and showed me messages on his phone to prove to me he wasn't talking to other women. He told me that he was gonna like female friends' photos to support them. I hate when people who are avoidantly attached do this. It's like, no, they don't need your fucking support. There is this real notion, I'm going to be passionate and heated right now. I hate how they feel like, they're doing these women a favor or men, depending on, who they're into, by supporting these people. It's like they don't need that fucking support from you. You're in a relationship. Your support should be to your primary partner or many if you're in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. This is a joke. And to me, it's a justification that I see a lot of avoidance use. It's the same with their exes. Oh, I should still be able to support and have them as friends. No, you fucking can't. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to be friends with any of your exes, you better have had time apart to the point where you're practically acquaintances, or if you're best friends, the romance between the two of you is utterly gone. But in most cases with avoidantly attached people, it's still fucking there. Why? Because the avoidant hasn't moved on. Neither usually has their ex. And if the ex has moved on, guess what usually happens? They block them because they're done. They're sick of it. Unless they're in a co-parenting arrangement, in which case that's, a different kind of hell. But nevertheless, this justification is not okay. I freaking hate it when people do this shit. It's so not okay. But good on you for challenging him on this. Oh, just this guy's making me want to, throttle him. Not that I would. I'm just saying I feel annoyed with the way this guy's behaving. Anyways, the night before our booked hotel weekend, he sent me a video late at night at a restaurant with a feminine sounding voice next to him. I asked who it was, and he said it was his new famous TikTok star coworker he'd just bragged to me about a week before. This was very out of character for him. He lived in a small town with no peers and was never out late and always with his parents. He also scoffed at social media influencers. Naturally, I panicked and went through his followers on Instagram to find this coworker, but I found another profile. It was of the ex-Australian Tinder match he had previously told me about that he still kept in contact with, who he'd met abroad years ago. I saw he'd been liking most of her photos, including bikini photos, up until just a week or so before. I asked to FaceTime him. He called and said, okay, Theresa, first of all, this coworker is a dude. This coworker was on a FTM transition journey, and I suspected now that he was using their pronouns in his favor because this person was his physical type and sexual fantasy. Ah, that's terrible. After viewing their profile, they seemed extremely sexually liberated with a subscription to their explicit content. He had liked their newest photo, a picture of them in a jockstrap thong bent over for the camera. I confronted him about the Tinder ex's bikini photos, and he admitted that he'd messed up. He said he guessed it was just a case of wandering eyes and a fear of commitment. Well, yes to both of those, but there's more to it than that. Then he said I had manifested this because it was always seeming like I was trying to find evidence to prove to myself that he was the bad guy. Oh my fucking God. We're going to take a moment here to talk about this. Okay, so I know in some spiritual circles and also in some relationship coachal circles, they often talk about this idea that, if you put out your fears and that negative energy will come back to you, right? Like it's this idea of what you put out, you will receive. No, Theresa, you have not put out negative energy into this relationship. This man has put out so much negativity about his character, about how he views relationships, his position in relationships, that you haven't manifested this. This is deflection. What a moron. This guy is just so not okay for what he's doing here. This is such fucked up behavior. I really don't like the fact that he's using that on you. It's true to a degree that we have to be careful of our thoughts and feelings to not let them, totally derail us from time to time, because they can, and that's to be expected. But this is just spiritual bypass bullshit and also very not okay. He can't handle, obviously, the fact that you're bringing this up against him, and I feel like he's about to use this as a justification to leave. I feel like we're nearing phase 3 of detached right now. Anyways, he said that my negativity and my health problems I'd been having hadn't gotten to him, and that it seemed like I couldn't have a good day anymore. He said he missed the fun we used to have. He said he knew that he should just be happy, but that he just wasn't. I asked him how long he'd felt like this, and he said maybe around a month. Yeah, well, that's consistent with what I said earlier, right? About how I suspected that he was looking for heightened intensity in sex because he was already starting to go through a bit of withdrawing because he wasn't feeling good about being in a healthy relationship. He said if he wasn't good enough for me, he'd never be good enough for anybody. He told me we had no hope anyway because I didn't want to move. I fought back, saying told him many times I wanted to move away and had no ties to where I was staying. He told me anytime he brought up me moving to his town, I never took it seriously. Meanwhile, anytime he brought this up, I thought he was joking. Okay, we got projection here. I told him I expected to have that serious talk at the year mark. I asked him if I could move there when I could financially afford to, and he scoffed and said he wasn't going to allow it. He then said in a wistful way, like he had said about the dressing room a month earlier, well, I'll always think of your opinion of season 8 of Game of Thrones is trash. I said, wait, are you breaking up with me? He said, yeah, I guess I am. After 2 days, I reached out apologizing for my partner breakup. No, you shouldn't be apologizing for that, Theresa. I told him I projected my insecurities onto him and that I never meant to make him feel like a bad guy and asked him if he was willing to try and work things out. Okay, we're going to take a pause here. Theresa, I know why you're doing that, and I know it's confusing, and I know that what you've been through is fucking terrible. But you did not project your insecurities. You were made to feel insecure because of his bad behavior. You don't owe him an apology. He owes you 1,000 well-drafted, constructed apologies until the day that he goes to his maker. Like, this is just not okay. I understand why you did what you do. Sorry, I understand why you did what you did there, but you're fawning in this particular instance, so you didn't need to do that. And I'm not saying that to try and make you feel inadequate for what you did. I get why you did that, but this guy totally flipped the script on you and made it seem like he actually did Darvo on you, if you think about it. He denied his role, he attacked you, and he reversed the victim and offender. So in a way, we have had a covert abusive relationship situation happen right here. Sure, it may not look and sound as intense as some of the other cases that I've talked about, but he totally employed a bit of Darvo on you right there. So sorry, you shouldn't be apologizing for this. I understand why you did, but not necessary. Anyways, blah, blah, blah. He said all he felt he was able to do for me was put up a failing tough persona, all while his own problems that he thought he'd worked on and bettered himself over were eating him away from the inside. He said he was really disappointed in himself, embarrassed, and filled with self-hate. Well, we knew that. He said it was wrong of him to not think about the future for us, that he had felt like he knew things would get in the way to ruin our relationship eventually. So we just thought about having the most fun we could have before everything inevitably crumbled instead of building a strong foundation for us to build off in the long term. He continued, I'm not good at confrontation. That's why I always avoid it and act like nothing bothers me. And when I can't avoid it, I panic and run away. Well, if that's not an admittance of avoidant attachment, I don't know what is. He told me he was eternally grateful to me for proving to him that he was worthy of love. I asked him if he still wanted to be friends, and he said yes, that he honestly didn't know what he'd do without me, and that we would get through this and work through this together. For the next week or so, we talked as friends, but then he ghosted me after discussing his dad's health scare. I never reached back out after this. We still follow each other on Instagram, we watch each other's stories, and recently Hurricane Helene hit my area of the US so hard that it completely devastated some of the communities around me. I couldn't help but think he might finally reach out to check in on me. Should I reach out to him or just unfollow? Did I self-sabotage a relationship with a good guy and overwhelm him? What did he get out of this? Thank you for your time. Okay, Theresa, I'm going to answer everything you've finished off with there in just a hot second, but I just want to say I'm so sorry that you went through this because I can understand in the midst of the woods, this would have been confusing as fuck. To me, looking on the outside, looking in, and I'm sure people who listen to this story, whether it be on podcast, YouTube, or watch it on Instagram, will probably share some similar sentiments to me. This guy has got the problem. No, he's not a good person. He's a messy person. I wouldn't even go so far as to say he's a bad person because I hate the binaries. But I'd say the more unsavory aspects of this guy definitely outweigh the good, meaning that he has so much self-esteem problems going on that he's really swimming in that, or I should say drowning, and he doesn't want to learn how to swim. His concept of relationships is also really bad. Oh, I knew this was going to fail, so I just thought, let's have as much fun now before it all goes horribly wrong. He wasn't committed to actually working on this, even though he said he would, because his self-esteem has dictated this entire thing. This man needs so much work and therapy. It just seems like he's got a lot of stuff that he needs to work on. And I also want to state too that you definitely did not self-sabotage a relationship. He did. The only reason you're probably feeling that is because of how he made it seem. And in terms of what did he get out of this, I think he definitely would have valued the time you shared. You are going to be on his mind for quite some time. And I imagine that even if he does his best to compartmentalize and act like he's moved on off the back of this too, he's not. I think he would have gotten value out of your time together. I think all of these avoidantly attached people do to a degree, feel like you might be the one that got away, even though it doesn't feel like it in the moment. But I do think that, you left a big impression on him. That's been positive. But will he do anything with that and necessarily change at the moment? No, probably not. I think that it's very easy for people to feel used off the back of these experiences, to feel like the avoidant, was the one that got away and that you were a learning lesson and he's going to better himself. When he said to you, "You've taught me that I'm worthy of love," you haven't. You really haven't. That inner concept of him, that inner core of "I am not worthy of love and I always ruin things and I'm just going to keep running away because I don't know how to, manage conflict," that's him. That's his stuff. Do you know how long that takes to work on that shit? 5 goddamn years at least. It's not going to go away anytime soon. There's so much mixed messaging that's gone on here that I can understand you probably internalizing and feeling like this is your fault. I feel like I'm, you know, in the wrong here. But I want to just reassure you and say, no, you're not. I think that to me, this guy projected a lot of his crap onto you. I think he's a sex addict. If you want to look into this, because this actually reminded me so much of the opening chapter of The Truth by Neil Strauss, go read that. Because Ingrid and Neil's relationship is almost word for word similar to some of the stuff that you're going through here, albeit with less cheating. In fact, there's no cheating. There's just a lot of sexting, and there was tons of cheating in that book. But the opening stuff has so many points in that which are very similar to this. Go check that out. You can see what happened to Neil in his journey of what he needed to go through to work on himself, because I can assure you it's still an ongoing journey for him. But yeah, great book. Letter was fantastic. Thank you for sharing this with me, Theresa. It was so good reading this, and I'm so sorry that you went through this and you've been made to feel this way. Reading this suggests to me that you're probably in the early stages of your breakup recovery. If you need help with this, I'd highly recommend speaking to one of my team members, because they can definitely help sort out some of this stuff and help you make sense of it. But you definitely dated someone with a fearful avoidant attachment style in my eyes. Keen to hear what everyone else has to say about it too. And just to round out here, if you enjoyed this letter reading, feel free to leave us a review on Spotify. It really helps us out. If you want your letter read, the letter submissions will be open again on Friday this week from 12 p.m. Sydney, Australia time. We're taking 8 submissions for December because your boy needs rest and relaxation. But all that is to say is I'm super excited to obviously take on the December batch before we go into 2025. And I hope that you found this reading validating and supportive.